The wind roared across the Colorado forest like a warning from another world as Harper Lane stumbled forward, clutching her 4-month-old daughter to her chest. Snow hammered her face, slicing her skin with needles of ice, each step heavier than the last. Her boots sank into drifts so deep they swallowed her ankles, dragging her down as if the earth itself wanted to keep her. Lily whimpered beneath the thin blanket, her tiny breath warm against Harper's trembling collarbone. The storm had already stolen the path behind them, erasing every trace of where Damien's SUV had disappeared minutes earlier. Harper still heard the echo of the door slamming, the click of the lock, the cold finality in his eyes when he told her to step out for a moment. She never imagined he would drive away. She never imagined he would choose Sloane Burke over their daughter's fragile life. But now the truth burned hotter than the cold. He wanted them gone. Harper tried to scream for help, but the wind shredded her voice before it left her throat. Her lips had cracked, bleeding into the snowflakes that landed on them like tiny shards of glass. She shifted Lily higher against her chest, whispering prayers she wasn't sure she believed anymore. The world felt too wide, too cruel, and too quiet for anyone to find them out here. She thought of the warm lodge she once worked in, the smell of cinnamon coffee, the laughter of tourists, things that felt like memories stolen from another woman's life. Her legs shook violently. She didn't know how long she could keep moving through the storm, but she knew stopping meant death. Somewhere deep in the trees, a howl rose long, low, and impossible to ignore. Harper froze. The sound scraped down her spine like a blade. Wolves hunted these mountains. She had heard guides talk about them at the lodge, how they watched from shadows, testing the weak and the wounded. She swallowed hard, drew Lily closer, and forced herself to keep walking. But the howl came again, closer this time, vibrating through the frozen air. Harper's heartbeat thundered so loud it drowned the storm for a moment. She turned her head, vision blurred by snow, and saw a shadow moving between the trees. Not human, large, silent, tracking them with purpose. Her legs nearly gave out. She whispered, "Please, not now, not tonight." The creature stepped into faint moonlight, its fur dusted with snow, its eyes glowing a strange, steady amber. The wolf did not lunge. It simply stared, as if weighing her worth, as if deciding whether she and her child deserved to live. Harper stood frozen, breath shaking, unable to lift her feet from the snow. The wolf took one slow step toward her, lowering its head, not in threat but in a strange, deliberate recognition. She felt something ancient pass between them, something that told her this creature understood suffering, cold, and survival far better than any human who had ever betrayed her. Lily whimpered softly, and the wolf's ears flicked toward the sound. Instead of advancing, it turned its head toward the darkness beyond the trees, as if pointing her somewhere. Harper squinted through the storm and suddenly saw a flicker of light, a moving beam, faint but real, slicing through the swirling white. Someone was out there, someone with a flashlight, someone walking toward her. And whoever it was had just noticed the wolf beside her. They were close. Before the blizzard tried to swallow her whole, Harper Lane lived in a world that looked steady on the outside but trembled beneath every surface. People who knew her saw a quiet young mother working long shifts at the mountain lodge, serving drinks with a soft smile and tired eyes. They believed she was lucky to have a husband like Damien Cross, a man who spoke with confidence, dressed like success, and carried himself as if the world owed him something. Harper once believed that too. She remembered the early days when he held her hand under the warm lights of the lodge, promising a future far brighter than the childhood she spent moving between small towns and cheap motel rooms. But promises age quickly when truth begins to rot. Damien changed the moment Harper became pregnant. His charm, once comforting, hardened into sarcasm that cut her in places she could not show anyone. He said things like, "We can't afford mistakes right now," and "Try not to make things harder." Each comment landed like a quiet bruise on her heart. Harper tried to explain that she was doing her best, but Damien always had a way of twisting her words until she questioned her sanity. The more she shrank, the more he grew. When Lily was born, instead of joy, Damien felt trapped. Harper watched him drift farther away, spending late nights out, returning with the cold smell of wind on his coat and excuses that changed depending on the day. She tucked her fears into the quiet corners of their home, hoping motherhood would soften him again. But Damien was already looking beyond her. The first real crack showed when Harper found a receipt for an expensive dinner in Denver, far beyond what they could afford. Damien said it was for networking, but something in his eyes trembled. Later she learned the truth. Sloane Burke, the glamorous woman whose picture flashed across business magazines, had stepped into Damien's life like a temptation he couldn't resist. Sloane, with her effortless wealth and powerful family, represented everything Damien thought he deserved but had never earned. Harper noticed the changes, the new cologne, the secretive texts, the sudden insistence that she should rest at home instead of working. But the most painful part was how gently he lied, as if she were too fragile to handle the truth. She wondered when her love had become an inconvenience. On a cold morning a week before the trip, Harper overheard Damien arguing on the phone. His voice was sharp, tense, desperate. He said, "She won't fight back. She never does." Harper froze in the hallway, her heart pounding as she pressed Lily to her shoulder. She didn't know who he was talking about, but her name hung in the silence after he ended the call. Still, Harper tried to hope. She told herself that marriage had seasons, that this darkness would pass. When Damien suggested a family trip to the mountains, she believed it was a sign of healing. She packed the baby's clothes and whispered to Lily that maybe things were finally changing. What Harper could not see was the storm building not in the sky, but in Damien's eyes, cold, calculated, and ready to break whatever innocence she had left. And the moment he turned the key in the ignition, her fate was already sealed. She had no idea the trip he framed as reconciliation was designed to end her story, leaving her helpless in a storm she could not escape. The drive into the mountains had always comforted Harper Lane, but the air inside Damien's SUV felt colder than the snow outside. He insisted the trip would help them reconnect, yet every mile made the quiet between them heavier. Lily slept in her carrier, unaware her parents were unraveling in. Harper tried to start small conversations, but Damien answered with flat tones that brushed the edges of nerves. He kept checking his phone, turning the screen away as if guarding a secret. She told herself not to worry, yet something inside tightened, warning her this trip wasn't meant to heal. The higher they climbed, the more Harper sensed unease threading through the quiet cabin. Outside, evergreens blurred beneath falling snow, but inside the SUV, Damien's tension thickened. Lily stirred once, whimpering, and Harper soothed her quickly. She feared Damien would snap, though he never raised his voice, only lowered his. When they stopped at a lookout, the mountains stretched beneath a bruised sky. Damien stepped away to take a call, shoulders tight, voice sharp. Harper pretended not to notice, but fragments drifted to her. "Tonight, finished, don't worry." She touched Lily's cheek, sensing the world shifting beneath her feet without. Back on the road, tension coiled tighter. Harper watched Damien's eyes flick to the rearview mirror as if expecting something to appear behind them. She tried to steady her breath, reminding herself he once loved her deeply. But the man gripping the wheel now felt like a stranger wearing Damien's face. The sun dipped behind the ridge, turning the snowfield gray. They reached the chalet near dusk, its warm lights flickering through frosted windows. Harper wanted to believe this place could heal them, yet the silence inside felt hollow. Damien unpacked quickly, pacing with restless energy she didn't recognize, refusing her. That night, the fire crackled while Harper rocked Lily, humming to ease nerves. Damien sat across the room, scrolling through messages with a rigid jaw. When she asked if everything was right, he answered too quickly, too flat. The distance between them widened, colder than the storm brewing. Later, Damien suggested a night drive to glimpse the ridge under moonlight. Harper hesitated but agreed, hoping shared moments might soften him. She bundled Lily carefully, stepping into the freezing dark. The wind slapped her cheeks, and dread pressed against her ribs, though she couldn't explain why every instinct screamed to stay. They climbed into the SUV again, the engine grumbling in the deepening cold. Harper expected Damien to drive toward the main road, but he veered onto a narrow path she'd never seen. Trees crowded the edges, branches scraping the windows. Her pulse quickened as unease gathered like shadows tightening around. When Damien stopped the vehicle, the forest felt unnervingly still. He told Harper he needed help checking the rear tires. She believed him because hope still lingered. Fragile and desperate, she opened the door, lifting Lily close. Snow whipped into her face, stealing her breath. And then Damien's smile vanished. Harper stepped onto the frozen ground, her boots sinking into the drift. She adjusted Lily's blanket, shielding the baby from the cutting wind. Damien circled behind the SUV, his footsteps crunching with unsettling purpose. Harper waited for instructions, but none came. Instead, an eerie silence filled the space between. She turned toward Damien, expecting him to reappear with reassurance or explanation, but what emerged from the shadows was a face stripped of warmth. His eyes held none of the man she'd married. Snow spiraled between them, whispering warnings. In that suspended moment, Harper sensed her life tilting toward something very wrong. Harper felt the air tighten around her as Damien stepped closer, his boots sinking into the snow with slow, deliberate weight. The forest held its breath. Lily whimpered softly, sensing the shift in energy. Harper managed a faint smile, trying to read his expression, but the hollowness in his eyes chilled her more than the storm ever could. He moved with unsettling calm, circling behind her as though inspecting something fragile and disposable. Harper clutched Lily tighter, her breath fogging the icy air. Damien's voice finally came, low and strangely emotionless, asking her to step farther from the car. She hesitated, expecting reassurance, but all she felt was a cold anticipation settling into her bones. "Damien," she said softly, "is something wrong?" Her voice cracked against the wind. He didn't answer. Instead, he stared at her with a look she had never seen, distance, mixed with calculation. Snowflakes clung to his hair, melting into beads that slid down his expressionless face. Lily shifted, letting out a tiny cry, and the sound fractured Harper's heart. Then Damien stepped closer, not to comfort her, but to reach for something near her feet. Harper watched his hand vanish into the snow, before emerging with a thick branch. Confusion flickered across her mind, but fear rose quickly behind it. He gripped the branch as if measuring its weight, testing whether it could do the damage he intended. Harper stepped back instinctively, slipping slightly on the ice. Damien didn't react. His breathing was steady, almost too steady, as though he had rehearsed this moment. The branch hung at his side like a verdict. Harper's pulse hammered in her ears. She tried to reason with herself, to believe he wouldn't hurt her until she saw his jaw tighten. "Move," he said. One word, flat, stripped of anything human. Harper froze, breath sharp and burning. She took a single step back, clutching Lily, as if her arms alone could shield them from whatever was coming. Damien advanced slowly, raising the branch just enough to make his intention unmistakable. The forest around them seemed to recoil. Harper tried one last time. "Damien, please, we can fix this. Just talk to me." But her plea dissolved into the winter air. Damien's eyes flicked toward Lily, and something dark passed across his face. Resentment, responsibility, regret twisted into something dangerous. Harper felt the world tilt. She knew then that love could not save her. Damien lunged not with the branch, but with his free hand, shoving Harper backward with a force she never expected from him. Her boots slid across the icy ground. She fought for balance, arms tightening around Lily. Her heel struck a hidden rock beneath the snow, sending her body pitching sideways. The world spun in white, terrifying silence. Harper collapsed hard, snow exploding around her. Lily screamed, a thin, piercing sound swallowed by the wind. Pain radiated through Harper's hip, but she forced herself upright, her breath ragged. Damien stood above her, branch still in hand, expression unreadable. He looked down at her as if she were already gone, as if the storm would finish what he started. Harper scrambled backward, snow soaking through her jeans, cold swallowing her legs. She held Lily close, whispering desperate promises that everything would be fine. But Damien took another step, raising the branch slightly, eyes empty. Harper felt her heartbeat stutter, the world narrowing into a pinpoint of terror. And then the branch slipped from his hand, as if something in the darkness behind her had frightened him first. Harper turned slowly, terrified to see what could scare a man who had just tried to erase her. Harper turned slowly, every muscle locked, expecting another threat shaped like teeth and hunger. Instead, she saw only darkness layered between the pines, shifting as the wind dragged snow across the ground. But Damien had clearly seen something, because the certainty in his face cracked for the first time since they arrived in the clearing. The branch slipped from his fingers, thudding against the ice. Harper tightened her hold on Lily, heart pounding. She wanted to run, but her legs shook too violently to obey. A low, Guttural sound rolled through the trees. Harper's breath hitched. Damien stepped back, eyes scanning the shadows as if trying to determine whether the darkness itself had taken shape. "We need to go," he whispered. But it was not spoken to Harper. It was a frightened admission, forced out of whatever pride he still carried. Harper rose slowly, pain radiating through her hip. The cold bit into her skin, but adrenaline numbed everything except her instinct to protect Lily. The sound came again, closer this time, vibrating through the frozen earth. Damien cursed under his breath. Then the figure emerged just enough for moonlight to catch the edge of a jacket. A man. Not a wolf. Not a creature of the storm. A human shape trudging through the snow with a powerful flashlight that cut a narrow beam through the blowing white. Damien froze. She had no reason to trust any man in the world at that moment. The beam swept across the clearing, glinting off the frozen ground, passing over Harper and Lily, then darting back with urgency. The man hurried forward, calling out, "Are you hurt?" His voice carried confidence and concern, so different from the emptiness Harper had grown used to. Damien reacted first. He ran. He didn't check on Harper. He didn't speak her name. He sprinted toward the SUV, slipping once on the ice but recovering quickly. The man shouted for him to stop, but Damien dove into the vehicle, slammed the door, and peeled backward down the narrow trail, snow exploding beneath the tires. Harper watched the red taillights vanish into the storm, disbelief hollowing her chest. The man reached her, kneeling carefully. He pulled off his gloves and checked Lily's breathing with gentle hands. "You're freezing," he said. "We need to get you warmed up." Harper opened her mouth to speak, but her voice fractured into sobs. The man steadied her shoulder and helped her rise. "My name is Colton," he said. "You're safe now." His words felt impossible, but Harper clung to them because she had nothing else left to hold. He wrapped his thick coat around her and guided her toward the deer stand where he had been watching the ridge. Lily whimpered, but the warmth of the coat calmed her. Harper stumbled, leaning heavily on him. Colton moved with protective precision, glancing over his shoulder toward the direction Damien had fled. When they reached the small shelter, Colton clicked on a portable heater and pulled out thermal blankets. Harper sat shakily, wrapping Lily against her chest. Colton studied her for a moment, eyes narrowing with quiet realization. "Someone left you out there on purpose," he said. Harper flinched. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Colton eased down beside her. "Whatever happened," he said gently, "you're alive. And I saw enough tonight to know you shouldn't be alone." Harper drew a trembling breath, tears slipping down her numb cheeks. For the first time since the nightmare began, she realized someone had witnessed the beginning of the truth, and that meant Damien's lies might finally break. The emergency room lights were too bright, too white, too clean for what Harper had just survived. They burned into her eyes as nurses rushed Lily into a warmer, checking vitals, rubbing her tiny hands to bring color back. Harper lay on a gurney, shivering uncontrollably, her soaked clothes cut away, heated blankets layered over her trembling body. She could hear voices echoing around her, but her mind lagged behind, still trapped in the snow, still hearing Damien's cold voice, still watching him drive away. Colton stood a few steps back, arms crossed tightly, jaw locked. He had moved faster than she could process, calling search teams, reporting an abandoned mother and infant, insisting that every second mattered. He had carried Harper through the last half-mile of snow when her legs had finally given out. She remembered his heartbeat beneath her ear, steady and strong, anchoring her to life while the storm tried to swallow them whole. A doctor approached, flipping through a chart. "Hypothermia," he said. "Borderline severe. She's lucky she was found when she was." Harper tried to speak, to explain, to warn them about Damien, but her voice cracked into nothing. A nurse gently lifted her head, giving her warm water. The simple kindness nearly made her cry. When she finally managed to whisper, it came out fractured. "My husband, he left us. He knew he wanted." Her throat closed. The terror of telling the truth felt almost as heavy as the terror of dying in the snow. The doctor exchanged a look with a nurse, one of those quick, assessing looks that didn't require words, the kind that said, "We've heard unstable stories before." "Mrs. Cross," the doctor began carefully, "hypothermia can cause confusion. Let's wait until you warm up before we jump to conclusions." Harper's chest tightened. They didn't believe her. Colton stepped forward immediately. "I saw the scene," he said firmly. "She didn't wander into the storm. Someone put her there. Someone she trusted. But the doctor barely reacted. "We just need to verify the facts," he said politely, in that frustrating tone professionals used when they secretly doubted every word. A police officer soon entered, notebook ready. Harper felt some relief, someone to tell the truth to. But when she started recounting the events, her voice shaking, the officer paused her twice, asking the same questions again in a slower, more patronizing tone. "So you're saying your husband intentionally abandoned you?" he repeated. "Yes," Harper insisted. "He pushed me. He had a branch he wanted, he wasn't going to stop." "And you didn't fall? You're sure?" "I didn't fall," she whispered. "He meant to kill us." The officer scribbled something, expression unreadable. "We'll contact your husband for his statement." Her blood ran cold. Damien would spin this. He would twist reality, just as he had twisted her thoughts for years. He would say she panicked, that she wandered off, that she was unstable. That motherhood overwhelmed her. And he had money now, Sloanberg's money behind him. Influence, lawyers, control. Fear crawled up Harper's spine. Colton stepped closer again. "Officer, she's telling the truth. When I found her, she was—" But the officer raised a hand. "We'll look into it. Right now, we need statements from everyone involved." He closed the notebook. Including her husband. Harper felt the room tilt. Lily began crying softly from the bassinet beside her, and the sound shredded Harper's last strand of strength. She reached out with shaking hands to touch her daughter's tiny fingers. "I can't let him near her," she whispered. "Please, don't let him take her." Colton heard the desperation in her voice. His expression hardened not with doubt, but with promise. He stepped forward, placing a grounding hand on the bedrail. "You're not alone," he said quietly, voice steady as steel. "I saw enough to know something is very, very wrong, and I'm not letting him rewrite what happened." Harper looked into his eyes and felt, for the first time since the storm, a flicker of safety. But that flicker dimmed when the nurse returned to say 4 devastating words. "Your husband is here." And Damien was already demanding to see her. Damien Cross entered the hospital room, as if he were the grieving husband, in a movie written for him alone, eyes wide, breath shaky, voice trembling in just the right places. Harper felt her stomach twist. She had seen this performance before, but never with stakes this high. Lily whimpered in her bassinet, sensing the tension immediately. Harper's fingers curled in the blanket, bracing herself. "Harper," Damien gasped, rushing toward her bed. "My God, I came as soon as I heard. What happened to you?" She flinched, the trauma still raw. Damien noticed and adjusted instantly, stepping back just enough to seem respectful. A master manipulator, always watching, always calculating. The police officer stood near the door, observing quietly. Harper needed him to hear the truth. But her throat felt tight, her breath stuck somewhere painfully deep. Damien turned to the officer. "I've been sick with worry," he said. "My wife, she's been struggling since the baby. I didn't know things were this bad." The words sliced into her. Harper forced herself to sit taller despite the ache in her bones. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't twist this." Damien's face softened with exaggerated pity. "Honey, you wandered off. The storm." "No." Harper's voice broke, trembling with disbelief. "You pushed me. You left us to die." The officer lifted a hand. "Mrs. Cross, let's keep things calm." "Calm?" Harper choked out, trembling. "He tried to kill us." Damien lowered his eyes, shaking his head as though he were the victim. "She's confused," he murmured, "just loud enough. The stress, the sleep deprivation, she's been overwhelmed for months." A burning pressure built behind Harper's ribs. She wanted to scream, to grab the officer and make him see the truth. But trauma had a way of silencing even the strongest voice. Damien knew that. He counted on it. Colton appeared in the hallway, his presence instantly changing the air. He stepped into the room with quiet authority. "Officer," he said calmly. "I was there. I found her. She didn't wander off." Damien's jaw flexed. "Who exactly are you? Someone who helped your wife when you didn't?" The temperature in the room shifted. Damien took an involuntary step forward, but the officer raised a hand. "Mr. Hayes, we'll take your statement, but right now, I need to hear Mrs. Cross finish hers." Damien quickly softened again. "Harper, sweetheart, tell them the truth. Tell them you panicked, that you slipped." Her hands clenched the blanket so tightly her knuckles whitened. "I didn't slip," she whispered. "You meant to leave me." She expected him to deny it again, but instead his expression flickered, the mask cracking for just 1 second. He covered it almost instantly, but Harper saw it. Colton saw it too. The officer didn't. Not yet. "Officer," Damien said gently, "please, my wife needs rest. I can stay with her, help with the baby." "No," Harper breathed, voice cracking. "Don't let him near Lily." Damien's eyes sharpened for a heartbeat. The real man slipped through. Cold, threatening, the man she saw in the snow. But with the officer, the doctor, and Colton present, he forced the softness back into place. "I would never hurt my family," he said, almost whispering. "I love them." Harper felt the lie so hard it shook her. The officer closed his notebook. "We'll continue later. For now, Mr. Cross, you can step out while she rests." Damien hesitated, then smiled softly. Too softly. "Of course," he said. "I'll be right outside." He left the room, but Harper felt no relief. Because she knew him. She knew that smile. Colton moved beside her bed. "He's scared," he said quietly. "Men like him only pretend harder when they're cornered." Harper wiped a tear from her cheek, voice trembling. "I don't know how to fight him." "You won't fight him alone," Colton replied, "and he won't win." Harper opened her mouth to respond. But then she looked toward the doorway and saw Damien watching her through the small glass window. His expression stripped of charm, stripped of sympathy, stripped of everything except one chilling promise. This wasn't over. Harper woke to the faint hum of machines and the soft, rhythmic breathing of her daughter beside her. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe she was safe. But safety was a fragile illusion, one that shattered the moment she heard Damien's voice drifting through the hallway, low and persuasive, directed at someone important. She recognized that tone, the honeyed one he used when he wanted power. Fear gripped her chest. A nurse entered the room with a clipboard, offering a gentle smile, but her expression shifted slightly, the kind of polite softness reserved for people considered unstable. "Mrs. Cross," she said carefully, "your husband gave us some information. He said you've been having a difficult time since the baby was born." Harper's stomach twisted. Here it was. The narrative he was building. "That's not true," she whispered. "He's lying. He's trying to make me look confused," the nurse finished gently. The words sliced through Harper. She wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't imagining the snow, the branch, the shove, the engine roaring away. She wasn't imagining the wolf or Colton's flashlight cutting through the dark. She remembered every second of her own near death. But the world trusted Damien more. Men like him always carried credibility like a shield. A social worker arrived soon after, clipboard in hand. "We just have a few questions," she said. "Standard procedure." Harper clenched the blanket. "Please. Just listen to me." But the questions came fast, too fast. Had she been sleeping? Had she felt depressed? Had she ever experienced anxiety before pregnancy? Had she ever wandered off without telling someone? Every answer she gave felt like stepping into a trap carefully designed by the man waiting outside the door. Colton entered mid-assessment, tension radiating off him. "She doesn't need interrogation," he snapped. "She needs protection." The social worker looked up, startled. "And you are?" "Someone who saw what happened," Colton replied. "Someone who carried her out of a storm she didn't walk into by herself." His voice steadied Harper's heartbeat. He spoke with authority that made people pause. The social worker hesitated. "Mr. Cross said." "I don't care what he said," Colton cut in. "I saw her footprints. I saw his tire tracks speeding away. I saw the angle of her fall. Nothing about that was accidental." The nurse shifted uncertainly. Doubt finally entered the room. But then Damien reappeared in the doorway, wearing the mask of a heartbroken husband. "Harper," he said softly, stepping closer. "I told them everything. They're just trying to help you." The lie crawled under her skin. Colton positioned himself between them, blocking Damien's path. "You don't get to come near her," Colton said. The temperature in the room changed instantly. Damien's jaw tightened, his eyes hardened for a fraction of a second before smoothing into false concern again. "I think we should all calm down," he said. "My wife is fragile. She needs me." "I need you gone," Harper whispered. Damien's head snapped toward her, disbelief flashing across his face before he buried it under charm. "Sweetheart, you're not well." His voice lowered. "I'll make sure they know you didn't mean that." Fear curled deep in Harper's lungs. He was so confident, so certain he could bend the truth until it snapped in his hands. The social worker watched the tension building, eyes narrowed, frown deepening. She wasn't fully convinced of either side yet, but doubt was a seed, and Damien hated losing control of any narrative. He stepped toward Harper again. But before he reached her, the social worker's phone buzzed with an incoming message. She read it, eyes widening. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to Damien with something new in her expression. Suspicion. Something had just shifted, and by the look on Damien's face, he knew it too. The social worker's eyes moved slowly from the glowing screen of her phone to Damien's carefully arranged expression. Whatever she had read unsettled her. Harper felt it instantly, the subtle shift of power in the room, like a draft of warm air slipping beneath a sealed door. Damien noticed it too. His smile faltered for the briefest second before returning, stretched too tightly across his face. "Is something wrong?" he asked, voice smooth but thinner than before. The social worker cleared her throat. "Mr. Cross, the officer on duty just sent over initial notes from your statement." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. There seemed to be inconsistencies. Inconsistencies. A word that carried weight. A word Damien despised. Harper held Lily closer, watching him closely. Damien let out a soft laugh, the kind he used in arguments to make her feel foolish. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Trauma does strange things to perception." The social worker didn't smile back. "Yes, it can. But your wife's story and your story, they don't align." Colton shifted his stance slightly, arms crossed as he studied Damien like someone examining a dangerous animal. "Probably because one of the stories is a lie," he said calmly. Damien turned to him, eyes narrowing just enough to betray irritation. "I don't know who you think you are, but this is a private family matter." Colton didn't blink. Leaving a woman and a baby in a snowstorm is not a family matter, it's attempted murder. The words struck the air like a breaking branch. The nurse inhaled sharply. Harper felt something inside her steady, a kind of trembling strength she hadn't felt in months. Someone was finally saying the truth out loud. Damien's jaw flexed. "Officer Bailey and I had a very reasonable conversation. My wife is overwhelmed. She wandered off, that's all." The social worker raised a brow. "But in your earlier statement, you said she left the vehicle during a disagreement, not that she wandered off." Damien froze. His mask slipped for a single heartbeat before he plastered it back on. "Yes, that's what I meant. A disagreement. She got emotional, and—" "No," Harper interrupted, voice shaking but firm. "You told them I suffer episodes, that I lose track of myself. You're trying to make them think I'm unstable." Damien's eyes flashed not with guilt, but with fury. Harper recognized it. It was the same look he wore before every cruel twist of words, every manipulation he used to bend her into silence. "I'm trying to protect you," he hissed softly. "You're confused." "I'm not confused." Her voice cracked, but she didn't shrink away. "I'm remembering." Colton stepped closer to her bedside. "And someone else remembers too." Everyone turned toward him. Harper felt her pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Colton held her gaze. "I didn't just find you. I recorded the ridge earlier that night. I use a thermal camera for tracking wildlife." Harper's breath hitched. Damien's face drained of color. Colton continued, "My equipment captures movement even from a distance. When I checked the footage after the rescue, it showed 2 heat signatures near your vehicle." He turned his eyes on Damien. One large, one small, and a sudden drop consistent with someone pushing another person. Damien's composure shattered. "That footage means nothing. It's unreliable. It's—" The social worker cut him off. "If that footage exists, it must be submitted." Damien took a step forward, voice rising. "This man is lying. He's inserting himself where he doesn't belong. He doesn't know my wife. He doesn't know our family." "He knows enough," Harper whispered. "Enough to save my life." Damien spun toward her, fury igniting behind his eyes, but the officer from earlier stepped into the doorway at that exact moment, holding a printed document. "Mr. Cross," he said coldly, "we need to speak again. New information has come up." Damien stiffened. "Now?" "Now." He looked back at Harper, something dark and promising etched into his stare. But he left the room anyway because for the first time, the story Damien built so carefully was beginning to crack, and he knew it. The moment the officer led Damien away, the hospital room felt warmer, almost breathable again. Harper exhaled shakily, releasing a tension she didn't realize had locked every muscle in her body. Lily slept peacefully against her chest, unaware that her father's lies were beginning to unravel. Still, Harper knew better than to believe the danger had passed. Men like Damien didn't break quietly, they shattered violently. Colton stayed near the doorway, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the empty hall where Damien had disappeared. He stood like a shield, solid and unmoving. Harper found comfort in his presence, but also a sense of guilt. He had stepped into a storm meant for her. "You shouldn't get involved," she whispered. Colton shook his head. "I already am, and I'm not walking away." His certainty stirred something fragile inside her, something she didn't have the strength to name. A nurse came in to check Lily, offering Harper a reassuring smile. "She's doing amazingly well," the nurse said. "Strong little girl." Harper brushed a thumb across Lily's cheek. "She didn't deserve any of this." "Neither did you," Colton murmured. Harper looked at him, surprised by how softly he said it, how much conviction sat behind the simple sentence. But the fragile calm broke when the officer returned 20 minutes later, expression tense. "Mrs. Cross," he said, "I need to update you on the situation." Harper held her breath. "What did he say?" The officer hesitated. "Mr. Cross insists you had an emotional episode. He told us that you demanded to get out of the car during an argument, that he tried to stop you but you ran into the woods." Harper shook her head. "That's not true." "I know," the officer said quietly, "but he's convincing, he's composed, and he has character witnesses, friends who claim you've been overwhelmed since the baby." Damien had prepared everything. Of course he had. Harper felt her throat tighten. "So, what happens now?" "Right now," the officer answered carefully, "this is still considered a domestic dispute, not a criminal case. Not until we review the thermal footage Mr. Hayes mentioned." He nodded toward Colton. "If that video shows what he believes it does, the case changes." Immediately. Relief flickered through Harper, but only briefly, because the officer's voice lowered into something heavy. "There's something else." Harper braced. "What?" The officer sighed. "Mr. Cross wants temporary sole custody of your daughter until you're evaluated." Her heart stopped. "What?" "He claims he's concerned about the child's safety while you're emotionally unstable. He's filing an emergency petition with the court tomorrow morning." The world swayed. Harper clutched Lily tighter, terror clawing into her lungs. Not again. Damien was trying to take everything, her voice, her truth, her life, and now her child. "No," Harper choked out. He can't take her." Colton stepped forward instantly. "He won't," he said, voice steady. "Harper, look at me. He won't." But Harper couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The walls began to close in. She had survived the snow, only to face a fight she wasn't strong enough to win alone. The officer tried to reassure her, but his words blurred behind the pounding in her ears. She pulled Lily closer, rocking gently, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He's going to take her," she whispered. "He's going to take my baby." Colton touched her shoulder, grounding her. "Not while I'm here," he said. "Let him file whatever he wants. We'll be ready, I promise you that." But even as he spoke, Harper noticed a figure standing at the far end of the hallway, watching her. Damien. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't pretending. His expression was cold, triumphant, certain, and he lifted his hand slowly, dragging a single finger across his throat. A silent message. A threat so clear it chilled her blood. Harper gasped. Because the performance was over, and the real Damien had finally stepped into the light. Harper barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Damien's gesture in the hallway, his fingers slicing across his throat, the unspoken promise that he would not lose, no matter who he had to destroy. Each time the image surfaced, she tightened her arms around Lily, whispering broken reassurances into the soft curve of her daughter's head, but fear clung to her like frost. She knew what Damien was capable of now. He wouldn't stop. Not until she was silent. By sunrise, the hospital room was dim and quiet. Soft, golden light filtered through the blinds, glowing across Lily's tiny chest as she slept. Harper watched her baby breathe, memorizing the peaceful expression she was terrified might be stolen from her. Colton returned early, carrying 2 coffees and a quiet intensity in his eyes. He placed 1 cup on the tray beside her bed. "You didn't sleep," he said gently. Harper shook her head. "He's going to take her," she whispered. "He's going to twist everything until the court believes him." Colton pulled a chair beside her. "Then we don't let him." She looked up, confused. "How?" He reached into his jacket and removed a small flash drive, the thermal footage. "This changes everything," he said. "Officer Bailey will hand it over to the detectives today. If the court sees this, Damien won't get custody, he'll get charges." A fragile hope flickered in Harper's chest. But hope alone couldn't overshadow fear. "He's dangerous," she said quietly. "You don't understand, Colton. He won't let this go." Colton leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Harper, listen to me. I've known men like him, men who think they can control every narrative. They always underestimate one thing." "What's that?" "The moment someone starts fighting back." Harper blinked, the words sinking in slowly, warming her like a small ember. Before she could respond, the door creaked open. Officer Bailey stepped inside, face serious. "Mrs. Cross, Mr. Hayes. We reviewed the footage." Harper's heart stopped. She couldn't breathe. The officer continued, "It shows 2 heat signatures consistent with a physical altercation, and a 3rd heat signature approaching afterward." "A 3rd?" Harper whispered. "The wolf." The officer nodded. "Yes, it's unusual, but it confirms her account of leading an infant through the snow. It supports the claim she wasn't disoriented or wandering." For the first time since the nightmare began, the truth stood tall beside her. But the officer's expression didn't entirely soften. "There's a problem," he said. Harper stiffened. "What now?" "Mr. Cross is claiming the footage is staged. He says Mr. Hayes has the money, motive, and resources to fabricate evidence if he wanted to." The room went still. Harper stared in disbelief. "Of course, Damien was twisting even this." Colton scoffed. "Fabricate? Officer, that camera runs a live timestamp straight from the manufacturer." "I know," Bailey said. "That's why we're running verification. But until then, the petition for temporary custody still stands." The fragile hope inside Harper cracked. "Meaning?" "Meaning," the officer said slowly. "The judge could rule in his favor unless stronger evidence appears." Harper's voice trembled. "Stronger? He tried to kill us. What more do you need?" Bailey lowered his gaze. "Something undeniable." Harper's breath faltered. Undeniable. She thought of the snow, the branch, the shove, the moment her body slammed into the icy ground, but none of that was on video. Colton's eyes narrowed with determination. "Then we create undeniable," he said. Bailey stared at him. "You can't interfere with a police investigation." "I'm not interfering," Colton replied calmly. "I'm offering resources, people, a team." Harper stared at him, startled. "Why would you do that?" Colton looked at her with quiet conviction. "Because I believe you. And because Damien isn't fighting fair, you shouldn't have to either." Before Harper could respond, a nurse rushed into the room, breathless. "Mrs. Cross, security needs to speak with you immediately." Harper's heart dropped. "Why?" The nurse swallowed hard. "Your husband, he's downstairs." Harper's blood went cold. "He's refusing to leave," the nurse whispered. "He says he's here to take the baby." Harper's world spun, because he wasn't waiting for a judge. Damien was making his move now. Harper's pulse hammered in her ears as the nurse's words settled over the room like a dark fog. "He's downstairs. He says he's here to take the baby." For a moment, Harper couldn't inhale, couldn't exhale. The world narrowed to a single terrifying thought: he's not waiting for the court. He was going to take Lily by force if he had to. Colton shot to his feet. "Where downstairs?" "Main lobby," the nurse whispered. "Security is stalling him, but he's demanding access to pediatrics. He says he's exercising his parental rights." Harper's stomach twisted so violently she thought she might be sick. "He'll lie to them," she choked out. "He'll say I'm unstable, that I'm dangerous." Colton squeezed her shoulder. "I won't let him near you." But Harper shook, panic building fast. She knew Damien's tactics too well. He didn't need truth, he only needed doubt. And if he convinced security she was a threat to her own child, even for a moment, they might hand Lily to him before the courts ever got involved. Officer Bailey stepped forward. "Mrs. Cross, I need you to stay calm." Legally, until the custody hearing, you both have equal rights. But given the allegations, he should not be removing the child from medical care without approval. Security is following protocol. But that won't stop him, Harper whispered. He won't back down because someone tells him no. Bailey didn't argue, because he knew she was right. Colton turned to the officer. Take me to him. Bailey hesitated. Sir, your involvement is already. Colton's voice hardened. He's trying to take a child from a hypothermia ward without permission. Lead me to him. Bailey relented. Fine, but stay behind me. They left the room, leaving Harper trembling, clutching Lily with both arms. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like an eternity. Every shadow in the hallway looked like Damien waiting to snatch her daughter. Finally, unable to sit still, Harper slipped out of bed, clutching Lily close despite the pain in her hip. The nurse tried to help her, but Harper shook her head. I need to see him. I need to know what he's doing. The nurse reluctantly guided her to the doorway, allowing her a partial view down the hall without exposing her completely. Below, in the lobby, Damien was surrounded by 3 security officers, but his expression was nothing like concern or confusion. It was rage, simmering beneath a veneer of charm. Harper could hear his voice drifting upward. My wife is mentally unstable, he said clearly. She ran into the blizzard. She nearly killed our baby. I'm not leaving without her. Her knees nearly buckled. Damien continued. Louder now, performing not for truth, but for witnesses. She needs treatment, not that stranger she ran off with, not that man who claims he found her. I'm her husband. I decide what's best. The lie wrapped itself around Harper like a noose. Colton stepped into view, positioning himself beside Officer Bailey. Your wife doesn't want you near her, he said evenly, and until the investigation is complete, you don't get to take her or the child anywhere. Damien's face hardened. And you don't get to tell me anything. You don't know her. You don't know us. Colton didn't flinch. I know what I saw on that ridge. I know she didn't walk into the snow. And I know men like you, men who smile while they destroy everything around them. A murmur rippled through nearby nurses and patients who had stopped to watch. Eyes were turning, staring, doubting. Damien sensed it instantly. His mask slipped just enough to reveal the fury boiling underneath. He pointed at Colton. This is your fault. She was fine until you came along. You're trying to steal my family. My family, Harper repeated in her head, bitterness rising. She had been his possession, never his partner. Damien whipped back toward security. Let me through. She's not safe. The baby is not safe. Security held firm. Sir, step back. Damien lunged forward. Colton intercepted him fast, gripping his arm and shoving him back. I said, stay away from her. Security swarmed instantly, restraining Damien as he thrashed against their hands. She's mine, he shouted. That baby is mine. You can't take them from me. Harper clutched Lily tighter, breath shaking. It was the first time Damien had ever lost control in public, and it was catastrophic for him. People recorded. Nurses whispered. Officers exchanged looks. His perfect mask had cracked open for everyone to see. Damien finally stopped struggling, chest heaving, eyes burning up at Harper's distant silhouette. He spat the words like venom. This isn't over. I will win. And when I do, she'll wish you never found her. Security dragged him back as he kicked at the floor in fury. Harper's tears spilled. Because he wasn't just losing control, he was unraveling. And that made him more dangerous than ever. For hours after security dragged Damien away, Harper could not stop shaking. Her bones still felt the cold of the blizzard, but this trembling came from something deeper, something the hospital heat couldn't thaw. Lily slept against her chest, small and warm, but even her steady breathing couldn't silence the fear circling Harper's mind. She knew Damien. She knew what happened when he felt cornered. He didn't fold. He didn't retreat. He escalated. By late afternoon, a detective arrived, a woman in her 40s, with tired eyes and a calm voice. Mrs. Cross, she said, pulling up a chair. I'm Detective Rowan. I've reviewed the early reports and the footage Mr. Hayes provided. Harper's breath caught. Is it enough? Rowan hesitated. Not a good sign. It raises questions. The thermal footage shows movement consistent with a forced fall, but it doesn't clearly show a shove. And your husband insists you left the vehicle voluntarily. Harper's heart sank. He pushed me. I believe you, Rowan said quietly, But believing isn't the same as proving, not yet. The words landed like ice. Harper felt her throat tighten. He tried to kill me. He tried to kill our baby. Rowan nodded slowly. I know, but right now, without a confession or an eyewitness, we can't file attempted homicide charges. What we can do is continue the investigation and request a psychological evaluation for Mr. Cross due to his behavior in the lobby. That was something, but not enough. Not when Damien was capable of slipping through cracks with a smile. When Rowan left, Harper sat in stunned silence until Colton returned. He had been pacing the hallway, speaking quietly with officers and staff, pulling whatever strings he could without crossing legal lines. He entered with a determined expression that softened the moment he saw her trembling. "Talk to me," he said gently. "What did the detective say?" Harper shook her head. "Not enough. Nothing is enough." Her eyes filled. "They think it's just domestic trouble." Colton sat on the edge of her bed. "This isn't domestic trouble. This is survival." But Harper could barely hear him over the panic rising inside. "If they don't arrest him now, he'll come back. He always comes back stronger." Colton's jaw tightened. "Then we prepare for him. We don't wait." Before Harper could ask what he meant, the social worker from earlier entered, holding another clipboard. Too many clipboards, too many opinions, and not enough truth. Her expression was cautious. "Mrs. Cross," she began, "I've reviewed both your statement and your husband's. Due to the conflicting accounts and the stress factors involved, the hospital's psychiatric team recommends a short-term observation period to ensure you're recovering emotionally." Harper felt the words like a slap. "You think I'm the one who needs observation?" "It's standard," the social worker said carefully, "given the circumstances." "No." Harper shook her head violently. "No, you're letting him win. He's making you think I'm unstable. That's what he does." Colton stood. "This is absurd." The social worker raised a hand. "Mr. Cross has filed concerns about postpartum instability. The hospital must address them." Harper felt her blood turn to ice. "If you keep me for observation," she whispered, "he'll use it to take Lily. You don't understand, he's building a case." The social worker's face softened, but didn't change course. "The evaluation won't affect custody. It's only about your well-being." Harper laughed a broken, disbelieving sound. "Everything affects custody." Tears filled her eyes. Panic clawed into her lungs. She looked at Colton like he was the last steady thing in her collapsing world. "Please don't let them do this," she begged. "I can't stay here alone. I can't let him twist this." Colton stepped closer, placing a grounding hand on her shoulder. "You won't be alone. I'll fight this. All of it." But before he could say more, Detective Rowan reappeared in the doorway, face tense. "Mrs. Cross," she said, "there's been a development." Harper froze. "What now?" Rowan exhaled. "Your husband, he's filed an emergency restraining order against you. He claims you're a danger to the child." Harper's knees buckled. "No." And then Rowan added the words that shattered her breath. "Until the hearing, you are legally prohibited from leaving the hospital with Lily." Harper felt the world collapse inward, as if the hospital walls were folding around her. "I can't leave with my own daughter?" she whispered. The words came out weak, disbelieving. Lily slept peacefully in her arms, unaware the law had just drawn an invisible line between her and her mother. Detective Rowan stepped farther into the room, sympathy flickering behind her professional expression. "Mrs. Cross, a temporary restraining order isn't a final judgment. It simply means we need to sort things out before either parent moves the child without legal approval." "But I am the parent protecting her," Harper said, voice shaking. "He's the one who tried to kill us." Rowan sighed. "I know what you're saying, and I'm not dismissing it, but in the eyes of the court, both parties must be evaluated." Mr. Cross filed extensive documentation statements from friends, co-workers, even an old therapist of yours. Harper stiffened. "An old therapist?" Rowan hesitated. "From years ago, after your mother passed, he submitted records about anxiety and grief responses." Harper felt sick. Damien had dug through her past and weaponized the darkest pieces of her life. "Those records have nothing to do with now. He's using them to argue instability," Rowan said quietly. Harper nearly dropped to her knees. "This is what he does. He twists everything until the truth looks crazy and the lies look logical." Colton stepped forward, tension carved across his jaw. "So what? You're telling us he can walk in here, Say she's unstable, and the system just believes him. Rowan faced him. No, the system doesn't believe him. The system investigates. That's all this is. That's not all this is, Harper whispered. This is how he wins. The social worker entered again, holding yet another folder. Her expression had changed, less confident now, more conflicted. Mrs. Cross, until the hearing tomorrow morning, the child must remain in the hospital nursery. Neither parent is allowed unsupervised access. Harper's heart shattered. No, she whispered. No, please. The social worker softened. I'm sorry. This is standard procedure when safety concerns are filed from both sides. Both sides. As if she and Damien were equals in harm. As if survival and manipulation weighed the same. Before the nurse could take Lily, Harper held her closer, inhaling her baby's faint milk-sweet scent, trying to memorize it in case horrifyingly this moment was the last time she held her freely. Colton moved beside her. There must be an alternative, he said firmly. Supervised by me, by the detective, by anyone. Rowan shook her head. The order is already filed. I can't override it. Harper kissed Lily's forehead, tears dripping onto the blanket. Mommy's here, she whispered into Lily's soft baby hair. Mommy's not going anywhere, I promise. But promises couldn't stop paperwork. Promises couldn't dismantle lies. Promises couldn't keep Damien away. The nurse slowly lifted Lily from her arms. Harper's soul tore with it. She pressed her hands to her mouth to keep from screaming, but the sob broke through anyway, a sound so raw the nurse paused, eyes glistening. I'll take good care of her, the nurse whispered. She'll be safe. Harper nodded, though she didn't believe anything was safe while Damien breathed. When Lily disappeared through the doorway, Harper collapsed back against the pillows, sobbing into her hands. He took her, she whispered. He took her without touching her. Colton knelt beside the bed. Listen to me, he said softly but fiercely. Tomorrow, everything changes. How? She choked out. He's winning. He's winning because he knows the rules better than I do. Colton met her eyes. Then we stopped playing by his rules. Harper stared at him, unable to form words. He stood, pulling out his phone. I'm calling my legal team in New York. The best custody attorney in the state will be here by morning, and I'm getting a forensic analyst to authenticate the thermal footage before the hearing. Harper wiped her tears with trembling fingers. Will it be enough? Yes, Colton said, because we're not just fighting to prove he's lying. We're fighting to prove you're the mother Lily deserves and that you've been surviving a man who should have been stopped a long time ago. Before Harper could respond, Detective Rowan's radio crackled. She listened, then looked up sharply. That was security, she said. Mr. Cross, he's no longer in the lobby. Harper's blood ran cold. Where is he? Rowan's expression darkened. They don't know. And in the silence that followed, Harper understood one devastating truth. Damien wasn't finished. He was repositioning, planning his next move. For the rest of the evening, the hospital shifted into a place Harper no longer recognized. Security moved down hallways with hushed urgency. Nurses exchanged glances they didn't want her to notice. Detective Rowan stayed close, speaking quietly into her radio every few minutes. And still, no one could find Damien Cross. It was as if he had dissolved into the sterile white walls. Harper sat upright in her hospital bed, blankets clutched in her fists, her breathing shallow. He's here, she whispered. I know he's here. Colton stood by the window, scanning the parking lot below. Security would have seen him leave. That's what scares me, Harper said. He didn't leave. Rowan approached, keeping her voice calm. We're searching every floor. So far, there's no sign of him. He may have gone home. Harper shook her head violently. Damien doesn't retreat. He hides. He watches. A tremor in her voice made Rowan's expression soften. We've increased security around the nursery. No one gets close without clearance. But the reassurance couldn't reach the panic twisting inside Harper. She had seen that look in Damien's eyes, the look of a man who had lost control and would do anything to take it back. A man with nothing left to hide would burn the world down, piece by piece. Colton stepped closer to Harper, gently placing a hand over hers. He's not getting near your daughter, he said. He's not getting near you. Harper swallowed hard. You don't know what he's capable of. Colton met her gaze with steady resolve. I'm starting to. A sudden knock startled all three of them. A young security guard stepped inside. Detective Rowan, we found something. Rowan stiffened. What is it? The guard shifted uneasily. A nurse reported a man matching Mr. Cross's description on the maternity floor earlier. But she didn't realize who he was until after he walked away. Fear shot through Harper like a blade. Maternity? That's where the nursery is. Rowan raised a hand for calm, but her tightening jaw betrayed her concern. Show me, she told the guard. The two disappeared down the hallway, leaving Harper gripping the bedsheets until her knuckles turned white. Colton sat beside her. He's not getting Lily, he said. You don't understand, Harper whispered. If he can't take full custody, he'll use the next best thing, fear. He'll make me break. He'll make me look unstable. You're not unstable. He's trying to make it true anyway. Harper looked down, blinking back tears. He always said I was too emotional, too fragile, that no one would ever believe me if I said something was wrong. Colton's voice sharpened with protectiveness. He manipulated you. That doesn't make his words true. But Harper barely heard him because down the hallway, a sudden alarm rang out, loud, urgent. Both she and Colton jolted upright. A nurse sprinted past the door. Code Yellow Infant Security Breach. Harper's heart stopped. She tore the blankets away and stumbled to her feet, ignoring the pain in her hip. Lily. She tried to run, but Colton caught her just in time. Harper, wait, let them check first. No, he took her. She pushed past him, barely making it into the hallway before her legs buckled. Colton steadied her, but she kept moving, driven by terror stronger than any injury. Down the corridor, red lights flashed outside the nursery. Security officers swarmed the entrance. Nurses cried out in confusion. One shouted, "He bypassed the sensor. How did he bypass the ankle sensor?" Harper's vision blurred. Please tell me she's safe." Rowan emerged from the chaos, hands raised. "Mrs. Cross, stop, listen, she's fine." Harper nearly collapsed. "Where is she?" Rowan stepped aside. A nurse carried Lily out of the nursery, swaddled and unharmed. "She's okay," the nurse said softly. "She's okay, Mom." Harper reached for her baby with a sob, holding her so tightly she couldn't breathe. Lily fussed softly, unaware she had been inches from danger. Rowan exhaled. Someone triggered the security doors manually, but Damien never made it inside. He was close, too close. Fear iced Harper's spine. "He won't stop." "No," Rowan said, "but neither will we." Colton stepped beside Harper, eyes burning with determination. "Tomorrow," he said, "we take everything from him." But Rowan wasn't finished. "There's something else," she said. "Something we just learned." Harper looked up slowly. Rowan's voice dropped. Mr. Cross bought a plane ticket out of the country for 3 people. Himself, the baby, and a woman named Sloane Burke. The words struck Harper so hard she nearly lost her grip on Lily. "A plane ticket?" she whispered. "For my baby?" Detective Rowan nodded grimly. "Yes, a flight to Vancouver, tomorrow at 2:15 p.m. He booked it 2 days ago. 2 days ago, before the blizzard, before the chalet, before the shove. This wasn't panic. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned." Harper felt her knees weaken. "He was going to take her, even if I died." Rowan exchanged a dark look with Colton. "It certainly raises serious concerns about intent," she said. "Intent?" Harper choked out. "It proves everything. He wanted me gone. He wanted Lily for himself. For her. Sloane Burke. The woman with a trust fund thick enough to bury bodies and legal fees. The woman Damien believed would upgrade his life if only Harper wasn't in the way." Colton placed a steadying hand on Harper's arm. "This is exactly what we needed," he said. "Proof of preparation." But Harper shook her head. "He'll lie. He'll say it was a vacation. He'll say the tickets were a surprise family trip." Rowan exhaled deeply. "He might try, but the timing is suspicious, and the passenger list makes it worse. He didn't book a ticket for you. That undermines him." "Unless he says we fought," Harper murmured. "Unless he says I refused to go with him. Unless he says—" "He can't say anything that beats what's coming next," Colton cut in. "My attorney just landed in Denver. She's on her way." Harper blinked, overwhelmed. You didn't have to do that." "Yes," he said simply, "I did." Before Harper could respond, Rowan received another radio call. She listened closely, eyebrows pinching. "They found footage," she said. Harper froze. "Footage of what?" Rowan hesitated. "A camera in the maternity hallway, caught a man matching Mr. Cross's build trying to disable a security panel earlier today. Everything inside Harper dropped. So he was trying to break into the nursery. Rowan nodded. He failed, but the attempt is on video. A tremor ran through Harper, the terror of almost losing her daughter mixing with the first real sense that the system might finally be turning in her favor. Rowan continued, "This helps your case significantly. Tomorrow's hearing will look very different than he expected." Harper let out a shaky breath. "He thinks he's so smart. He thinks he's so untouchable." "He's sloppy now," Colton said. "Fear makes men like him reckless." But even as he spoke, Harper felt something inside her unravel, not fear, but rage. A slow, hot, rising rage she had never allowed herself to feel. Damien had taken everything from her for so long, her voice, her confidence, her choices. Not anymore. "What do we do now?" Harper asked quietly. "We prepare," Rowan replied. "You'll give a full statement first thing in the morning. The attorney Mr. Hayes brought will represent you at the custody hearing. After that, we pursue charges. The attempted kidnapping attempt strengthens your position." Kidnapping. The word pulsed in the room like a heartbeat. Colton stepped closer. "He won't leave the country, he won't take Lily, and he won't touch you again." Harper stared down at her daughter's soft cheek and whispered, "He will never take you from me." But the quiet moment shattered when the overhead lights flickered. Once, twice, the power didn't go out, just trembled. A nurse poked her head into the hall. "They're checking the backup generator." Something tripped the system. Rowan stiffened. "That's not normal." Colton moved toward the door. "I'll check with security." But before he could leave, Harper's phone, a device she hadn't used since the blizzard, buzzed on the bedside table. A message. Unknown number, no contact name. With trembling fingers, Harper opened it. A single photograph loaded slowly. It was the hospital's exterior, taken from the parking lot, taken minutes ago. And below the image, a message. "You can't keep her from me. Tomorrow ends the hard way or the easy way. Choose wisely." Harper's breath vanished. Rowan leaned over her shoulder, reading the message with widening eyes. "He's here," Harper whispered. "Right now." Colton returned just as Rowan lifted her radio. "All units," she commanded sharply, "lock down the building. Damien Cross is on hospital grounds." And as alarms began to sound, Harper realized tomorrow's hearing wasn't the battle. Tonight was. Red emergency lights pulsed through the hospital corridors like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Harper stood frozen, clutching Lily so tightly the baby stirred against her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere safe, not with Damien somewhere inside these walls, slipping through corners like a shadow born from her worst memories. Detective Rowan barked orders into her radio. "All exits locked. Repeat, all exits locked. Suspect is on the premises. Proceed with caution, he may be armed." Armed. The word hit Harper like ice water. Colton immediately moved to the doorway, positioning himself as if he were the sole barrier between danger and Harper. "We're not staying in this room," he said. "Too exposed. Only one entrance, no visibility." Rowan nodded. "Agreed. We need to move her somewhere secure." Harper's voice trembled. "Where? Where is safe?" "The surgical wing," Rowan answered. "Limited access, reinforced doors, we can lock it down from inside." Harper tried to steady her breathing. "He won't stop," she whispered. "He won't stop until—" "He won't get close to you," Colton said, with a certainty he didn't fake. "Not tonight, not ever again." But the hallway outside told a different story. Doors slammed shut, nurses rushed patients into secured rooms, and the overhead loudspeaker repeated the same chilling message. "Security lockdown in effect. Remain where you are." A nightmare wrapped in fluorescent lighting. Rowan peeked into the corridor, scanning. "Clear for now. Let's move." Colton guided Harper gently, his hand steady on her back, while Rowan led the way with her weapon drawn. Harper's legs shook violently beneath her, but adrenaline pushed them forward. Lily whimpered, sensing the fear vibrating through her mother. Halfway down the hallway, a sharp crack echoed through the building, a sound that could have been a door slamming, or something far worse. Rowan froze. "Did you hear?" Another noise, closer this time, a metallic clang. Colton stepped in front of both Harper and Rowan. "He's trying to force a door," he whispered. "Somewhere on this level." Harper's pulse sprinted. She felt the terror rising in her throat like a scream she couldn't release. "Keep moving," Rowan said. They hurried toward the surgical wing, but as they rounded a corner, Harper's foot slipped slightly. Lily shifted, and Harper adjusted her hold. A breath, a cold gust, a presence. And then, a silhouette stepped out from behind a medicine cart at the far end of the hall. Tall, broad-shouldered, still. Damien. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He simply stared at Harper, his eyes burning even from 50 feet away. Harper's body locked. A small, strangled sound escaped her throat. Damien tilted his head slowly, like a predator studying prey. "Harper," he said, voice calm, too quiet for the chaos around them. "Give me my daughter." Colton lunged in front of her. Not a chance. Rowan raised her weapon. "Damien Cross, put your hands up." But Damien didn't move. He didn't even blink. "Detective," he murmured, "you don't understand what she's done. She's sick. She needs help. I'm the parent trying to do the right thing." Harper shook. Fury and terror tangled inside her. "You tried to kill me," she whispered. Damien's eyes flicked to her. "You slipped." Colton growled, "You're done, Cross." For the first time, Damien's smile cracked into something twisted. "No, Hayes, you're the one who's done. You ruined everything." He took one slow step forward. Rowan stepped in front of them. "Move again, and I shoot." Damien lifted both hands slightly, not in surrender, but in mockery. Shoot a father trying to protect his child? Good luck defending that. Rowan's finger tightened on the trigger. Harper clutched Lily so tightly her arms ached. "Why are you doing this?" she cried. Damien's expression flickered rage, possession, obsession twisted together. "Because you were supposed to stay quiet. I gave you everything, Harper, and you threw it away." "Everything?" she whispered. "You gave me fear. And you," Damien hissed, "gave me failure." Suddenly, he lunged. Rowan fired. Colton shoved Harper behind a supply cart. Security officers burst from a side hallway. The world exploded into chaos. Harper fell backward, shielding Lily with her body, her heart collapsing into panic as shouts and footsteps thundered through the corridor. She didn't know who had been hit. She didn't know if Damien was down. She didn't know if this nightmare was finally ending or just beginning another chapter. But then, a pair of strong arms lifted her from the floor. Colton's voice, raw but steady. "It's over, Harper. He's down." Harper turned her head and saw Damien pinned beneath two officers, blood on his sleeve, still screaming her name as if he owned it. And for the first time, she didn't freeze. She didn't tremble. She turned away. Because the man who once controlled her world no longer controlled anything. Not her, not her daughter, not a single breath of her future. By morning, the hospital felt eerily calm, too calm, as if the chaos of the night before had been swallowed by the sterile walls and fluorescent lights. But Harper knew better. Nothing was over yet. Damien might have been arrested after lunging at officers, but men like him didn't let their stories end in handcuffs. They twisted narratives until the world bent back in their favor. Harper sat in a wheelchair, Lily bundled in her arms, while Colton pushed her gently toward the hospital exit. Overnight, his legal team had arrived from New York, 3 attorneys in tailored suits, who looked like they walked straight out of a Manhattan boardroom. Their confidence alone steadied something inside her. Detective Rowan met them near the ambulance bay. "The judge agreed to move the emergency custody hearing to 10 this morning," she said. "Given the events of last night, the courthouse is treating this as a high-risk domestic case." "High risk," Harper repeated quietly. "They finally see it." Rowan's eyes softened. "They do. And the footage, the attempted nursery breach, the threat he texted you, they're all being reviewed." Harper swallowed hard. "Do you think the judge will believe me?" Colton stepped beside her, voice steady. "He'll have no choice." But Harper wasn't convinced. Fear lived in her bones. Years of silence, of manipulation, of gaslighting. Damien had spent their entire marriage building a world where she was always the one who needed fixing. A courtroom didn't erase that overnight. When they stepped out into the crisp morning air, photographers were already waiting. News vans lined the curb. Reporters called out, "Is it true he tried to abduct the child? Mrs. Cross, do you believe your husband intended to kill you? Who is the man with you?" Harper flinched at the attention, but Colton placed a hand on her shoulder, shielding her from the barrage. "Keep moving," he murmured. Inside the black SUV that Colton's team had arranged, Harper held Lily close, inhaling her warm baby scent. she whispered. "It's almost over, sweet girl. Mommy's right here." Colton watched her quietly from the opposite seat. "You know," he said softly, "you're stronger than anyone in that courthouse." Harper looked up, surprised by the warmth in his eyes. "I don't feel strong." "You don't have to feel strong to be strong," he said. His words settled deep inside her, warming a place that had long been cold. When they arrived at the courthouse, Rowan led them through a back entrance to avoid reporters. The hearing room was small, lined with wood paneling and humming with faint echoes. Harper's heart pounded as she took her seat, Lily in her arms. Minutes later, they brought Damien in, hands cuffed, expression bruised with anger. He scanned the room until his eyes locked onto Harper. The chill in his stare could have frozen flames. His lawyer leaned close, whispering furiously. Damien straightened, smoothing his hair, slipping back into the role he played so well. The misunderstood husband, the devoted father fighting a vindictive wife. But this time, he didn't control the narrative. The judge entered. "We're here to address emergency custody and evaluate risk factors associated with both parents." Damien's attorney launched into his performance first, claiming Harper suffered emotional instability, that she fled into the storm, that Colton inserted himself inappropriately, that Damien was the victim of a smear campaign. Harper's pulse thudded painfully. She hugged Lily a little closer. Then it was her turn. Colton's attorney rose, her voice sharp and clear. She presented the thermal footage. The text message, with the photo taken in the parking lot, the attempted nursery breach, the plane tickets to Vancouver. Each piece struck the courtroom like a hammer. Damien shifted. His confidence began to crack. Then Rowan took the stand. "In my professional opinion," she said, "Mr. Cross poses a credible threat to both mother and child." Damien shot to his feet. "She's lying. They're all lying." "Harper, tell them you're not afraid of me." Harper stood slowly, heart pounding. For the first time, she looked him in the eye without flinching. "I'm not afraid," she said quietly. "Not anymore." Damien blinked, startled, even wounded. And then the judge spoke the words Harper had prayed for through every terror-filled second of the last few days. "Temporary full custody is granted to Mrs. Harper Lane. Mr. Cross is to have no contact pending criminal investigation." A sound escaped Harper's throat, half sob, half relief. She pressed her lips to Lily's forehead as tears finally spilled freely. Damien screamed. The bailiff held him back. Colton's hand rested gently on Harper's back. "You did it," he whispered. "You won." Harper shook her head softly, eyes closed. "No," she said, "we survived." But deep down, she knew this wasn't just survival anymore. This was the start of something new. And for the first time in years, the future didn't look like fear, it looked like freedom. Harper never imagined freedom could feel so fragile. The courtroom victory should have filled her with triumph. But as she stepped into the hallway, Lily safely cradled in her arms, Colton at her side, she felt only exhaustion, the kind that seeped into her bones. The kind that came from surviving someone who tried to erase her. Colton placed a steadying hand on her back. "You're okay," he murmured. "It's over." But Harper shook her head. "Not yet. Not until he can't twist anything again." As if summoned by her words, furious shouts erupted from inside the courtroom. Damien's voice, ragged, desperate, unhinged, rose above the noise. "She ruined my life. I made her. She was nothing without me." The bailiffs dragged him out through a separate corridor, but his anger seeped through the walls like smoke. No mask, no charm, no lies, just the raw truth of who he really was. And Harper knew the judge had heard it too. Detective Rowan approached briskly. "Mrs. Lane, I know you're drained, but we need to debrief." New evidence surfaced during the hearing. Harper tensed. "What evidence?" Rowan motioned for them to follow into a private conference room. Once inside, she locked the door. On the table were several printed documents, a flash drive, and 2 voice transcripts. Rowan sat. One of Damien's associates, someone he paid to tamper with the hospital security system, was arrested this morning, and he's talking. Harper froze. "Talking? About what?" Rowan tapped the folder closest to her. "About the plan." Colton leaned forward. "The kidnapping?" Rowan nodded. "And more." She opened the folder and slid a transcript toward Harper. "Last week, Damien transferred a large sum of money to this associate. In exchange, the man was supposed to sabotage hospital cameras, disable certain access points, and create a window where Damien could take Lily from the nursery without detection. Harper felt her stomach twist. He planned everything, even before he hurt us in the snow. Yes, Rowan said, but there's more. Damien recorded a voice memo on his phone, outlining what he called the transition. Your removal. His new life with Sloane. He intended to file for sole custody after establishing a record of your instability. Harper's chest tightened. He wanted to replace me entirely. He wanted a perfect story, Rowan said. One where he's the victim. The father who tried to save his daughter from a dangerous mother. The man wronged by a wife who fell apart. He rehearsed lines for court. Scripts, entire narratives. Harper swallowed hard. He always rehearsed. Even arguments. Even apologies. Rowan nodded. Classic coercive control. But his downfall was arrogance. He recorded everything because he believed no one would ever hear it. She clicked the audio file. Damien's voice filled the room, smooth, cruel, and eerily calm. Once she's gone, everything resets. No more chaos. No more manipulation. No more her. Sloane and I will raise Lily. I'll tell them Harper couldn't cope. They'll believe it. They always do. Harper clamped a hand over her mouth. Her body shook violently as she listened to the man she once loved plan her disappearance with chilling detachment. Colton moved beside her, taking her free hand in his. You're safe, he whispered. He'll never touch you again. But Harper kept hearing the recording. People like her need consequences. She should have known when to stay quiet. Rowan stopped the audio. This is enough to pursue attempted murder charges, and kidnapping, and endangerment. He won't see daylight for a long time. Harper exhaled shakily. Relief rippled through her, and then something else. Rage. A rage she had buried for years under fear and self-doubt. He said I was nothing, Harper whispered. That I was chaos. That I made his life miserable. Abusers say anything that keeps them powerful, Rowan replied. Your existence threatened his control. That's all. Colton squeezed her hand gently. And look who's standing now. Harper looked at Lily sleeping peacefully, warm in her arms, and felt a strength rise from somewhere deep and quiet. I won't let her grow up thinking cruelty is love. Rowan nodded. You won't have to. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young attorney from Colton's team peeked inside. Miss Lane, the press is waiting downstairs. They want your statement. You don't have to give one. Harper stood slowly. I want to. Colton blinked. You sure? Yes, she said, voice steady. For every woman he called unstable. For every lie he weaponized. For every night he made me doubt my own reality. She stepped toward the hallway. I'm done being silent. But as the door opened, a reporter rushed toward them breathless. Miss Lane, big news. Damien Cross just tried to escape custody during transport. He didn't make it far. Harper froze. What? What happened? She whispered. The reporter swallowed. He's being taken to the hospital. Critical condition. They don't know if he'll survive. Harper's breath caught. Not with fear, not with grief, but with a strange, crushing rush of finality. Because fate had handed the man who tried to destroy her the consequences he refused to accept. For a long moment, Harper stood frozen in the courthouse hallway, unable to process the reporter's words. Damien Cross, relentless, vindictive, unbreakable in his own mind, was now fighting for his life. Not in the shadows, not in a courtroom he tried to manipulate, but on a hospital stretcher, surrounded by officers who no longer believed a single word he said. The world had finally stopped bending for him. Colton touched her elbow gently. You don't have to react right now, he murmured. Just breathe. Harper tried. Air entered her lungs, shaky but real. Did he hurt anyone? She asked. No, Detective Rowan replied, stepping beside them. He attempted to overpower a transport officer and ran into traffic. A car swerved, clipped him, and officers subdued him. It wasn't fatal, but significant. Harper nodded slowly. It wasn't triumph she felt, not joy, not satisfaction, just closure, quiet, heavy closure. Damien's downfall hadn't come from her hands. It came from his own self-destruction, his inability to accept losing control. Is he conscious? She asked softly. Rowan shook her head. Not yet. And you're under no obligation to see him, speak to him, or be involved further unless you choose to testify in the criminal case. Harper let the words settle inside her like warm water. She wasn't obligated. Not anymore. She wasn't bound to him, not emotionally, not legally, not spiritually. The chain he spent years tightening had finally snapped. Colton stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't owe him anything. Not closure, not forgiveness, nothing. Harper looked up at him. I know. For the first time, I know. They returned to the courthouse entrance, where a small crowd of reporters waited. Colton offered his arm. We can leave through the back if you prefer. Harper inhaled deeply. No, I want to speak. Not about him, but about me. Rowan nodded with subtle approval. I'll stand with you. Harper stepped into the sunlight, real sunlight, warm and bright, nothing like the cold white glare of the blizzard she'd nearly died in. Lily was in her arms, wrapped in a soft pink blanket, sleeping peacefully against her chest. Microphones rose. Cameras flashed. Voices surged. Miss Lane, do you have a statement? Do you fear for your safety? Do you want your husband prosecuted to the fullest extent? Harper lifted her chin, steady and sure. I want my daughter safe, she began. And I want every woman who has ever been told she is unstable or emotional when she's actually surviving abuse to know she isn't alone. The reporters quieted. Harper continued. I believed him for a long time. I believed the lies. I believed the blame. But the truth is simple. Love is not fear. Love is not control. Love is not silence. Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. I survived a man who thought breaking me would make him strong. But today, I stand here with full custody of my daughter and the support of people who saw the truth when I couldn't speak it. She glanced at Colton. His expression softened not with pride, but with something deeper. When the conference ended, Rowan escorted them to the SUV waiting outside. Go home, she said gently. Start living again. Home. The word no longer meant fear. It meant possibility. Colton opened the passenger door for her. Where to? Harper looked down at Lily, whose tiny fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. Then she looked at Colton, the man who had stepped into the blizzard of her life without hesitation. Someplace quiet, she said softly. Someplace peaceful. Colton smiled. I know just the place. My mountain house is empty, it's safe, and you're welcome there as long as you want. Harper felt her heart stir, not with dependency, but with hope. She didn't need saving anymore, but she was learning it was okay to accept kindness, companionship, maybe even something more someday. They drove toward the mountains as the sun set over Colorado, painting the sky in fiery shades of gold and rose. Harper rested her head against the window, Lily sleeping on her chest, Colton steady beside her. For the first time in years, her future didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a beginning. And Damien Cross, the man who tried to write her ending, had finally lost the pen. Harper Lane had reclaimed her life, her daughter, and her voice, and this time, no one would ever take them from her again. And just like that, our story closes, my dear friends. You're still here with me, aren't you? If you're truly still watching or reading at this moment, it means something in Harper's journey touched a place inside your heart, perhaps a quiet wound, a forgotten strength, or a truth you needed to hear again. What Harper lived through reminds us of a powerful teaching from Stoicism. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Marcus Aurelius wrote that centuries ago, yet it still speaks to anyone who has ever been belittled, doubted, or pushed into silence. Healing begins the moment we realize someone else's cruelty does not define our worth. As Epictetus taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. Harper reclaimed that freedom the moment she chose courage over fear. Her story isn't just entertainment, it's a reminder that you, too, deserve peace, safety, and a life where your voice carries weight. So, if this journey stirred something in you, if it made you feel seen, if it reminded you that survival is strength, then please, my wonderful friends, like this video, share it with someone who might need hope today, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never walk through these stories or these emotions alone. We're here with you, always.